Hello,
Awesome.
guys. This is Sierra Rose Typology, and I have a very special guest today, Grace. So, Grace and I just met, and I feel like we're kind of kindred spirits. I felt like a synchronicity with you right away, and I was like, oh, this girl is so sweet. I love her. Um, so, Grace, we connected through the cognitive type class server which you just recently joined. Do you want to tell our guests or our viewers how you got interested in cognitive type?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good question. So it's a little bit of a long story.
Okay.
And thank you so much for, having me on here and doing this Zoom meeting. And it has been like just so cool to get to know you a little bit, Sierra. And I'm so glad that you reached out to me like immediately when I joined the server and kind of welcomed me. And um, yeah, so I think I really, in a sense, became interested. Like when I was really young, I just like found it, I would just find it so fascinating, like who reminds me of who and why. I would be that person to just like see a movie and be like, oh, this celebrity looks just like this celebrity. Ooh, let me look them up. Like, I just have always been fascinated by like similarities or if people share idiosyncrasies or um, for some reason. And so when I heard about like the Myers-Briggs system. I think that was the first kind of typology I had heard of.
Your entry drug.
Yeah.
It was mine too. I was slumming it up in MBTI for a long time, an
Yes.
embarrassingly long time.
Oh, that's so true. Oh, that's really funny. Yes, it was the entry drug, and it was like so like popular, and everyone liked it.
Yeah. At
So
least, and at least people know what you're talking about if you bring up Myers-Briggs. People will know it's like the
Mhm.
four-letter system. So, yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And I think once I like found out that there was like trends, if there was a type, I think what I was actually looking for is like, does it bear out in reality? Like, does it, I was kind of hoping and expecting that if people really did have these similar energies in the way that they think that they would come across very similarly to other people. And so I mentally would do that where I was looking to see trends and then I would get so frustrated. We're in the Myers-Briggs community, like it wasn't like adding up where somebody's self-perception or the way that we test on really it's like the big five is what I think Myers-Briggs is more like is um, things that are practically like how would you be in a workplace or something like that. And it really like frustrated me. Maybe my TI or something, I don't know. Wanted the symmetry and consistency. Um, and yeah, so I after that got really into objective personality. So that's like another typing system where they started to actually build a database. And what really intrigued me was that they also found that twins they had found that identical twins would pretty much always be the same personality type. And that's where I'm like, okay, like this is really. And they found like people who appear like this, like they would call them type twins, and people of the same type would often like look very similar. And that was I was really interested in that, but then even there in the objective personality system, like it just yeah, it wasn't quite like there were just things where it would confuse me, and I ended up being I think mistyped in that system. And unfortunately,
What
if you
did
get
they
mistyped, like
what did they type you as, Grace?
yeah, they typed me as uh E ESTJ, so that would have been like a
ESTJ. Oh my
ESI.
gosh. Yeah.
And
I'm sorry, but that's a terrible take, even for
yeah,
OPS. You're obviously a TESI, okay?
yeah, I understand where. So they kind of did a type of math to figure it out. So they were like, okay, in the objective personality system, they have like human needs. Um,
Mhm.
they kind of say like, what are your human needs, and then do you use logic or emotion? So they kind of use the binary coins of feeling, thinking, sensation, intuition, plus human needs to try to figure it out. So they found out, okay, this person has the human need of self and tribe is where they're, and they really want to belong to the tribe. So
Kind of
therefore, they are a JE type.
yeah.
And they said, okay, I use thinking and I really care about reasons. Uh, and they would say, okay, well, it's not yourself over tribe reasons. That would be TI. It's tribe over self reasons. And so they concluded that meant I was TE. Uh,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, but
Oh, but
unfortunately,
you knew that didn't really gel. Okay.
yeah, at the time I believed myself to be, and this is funny too. I believe myself to be an ENFJ,
Okay.
um,
ENFJ.
because yeah, I
You
I had
have
been that
FE
way by
because you have FE.
yeah,
So that
yeah,
makes sense to me. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Even then, I always had this like something's not adding up,
Yeah.
and I felt internally like I was a an NE reviser, like that. I felt intuitively, but then I just couldn't, given what the stereotypes around the categories of like INTP and INFP were. I'm like, I don't fit, but I thought maybe I'm actually an INFP.
Hmm.
But then what do I make of this, the fact that I feel so strongly relating to this FETI axis? And so up until very recently, I just would be like, I just don't know what my type is. Nothing fits, until CT, that is.
Hmm. So how did you find CT?
Um, so back a few years ago, I think I must have ran into it from the type communities that I was in.
Okay.
Um, but then unfortunately, like they got a bad rap in the other communities, of course. Like not a bad rap, but people would just be like, "Oh, like that's not true." It like pigeonholes people into this category where we want to take seriously that someone knows their own psychology,
Yeah.
and we're weight psychology over voltology because voltology means nothing. Carl Jung said my system is not I think a physiognomy or something. So they're like, this is untrue to Carl Jung's cognitive functions, and you just can't make it that simple. And so, I think it was caricatured as this like this is misunderstanding people, which now I have found quite the opposite. I think CT is really great at saying, at letting what they believe about people and type just emergently reveal itself, and to
Hmm.
say, okay, like we see these commonalities between two people who have a similar voltology or mannerisms, and then what do we actually find that's in common between their psychology? And they don't like pigeonhole people or say you must be defined this certain way we define you. Like they let people define themselves, and to let those categories be whatever they are. And there's so much freedom and is not like unhelpfully labeling people. I think it's
Yeah.
quite the opposite. Anyway, that's my whole take on it.
So do you want to share like what you were typed as in CT?
Yeah, in CT, I was typed as TiNE with the development of the first three functions, so everything but FE, so development of TiNE and SI.
Okay. And
Um,
you feel like that fits for you fairly well.
Yeah, I actually finally do, which is such a nice thing. Like I think when I was talking to Colleen or Synthetic, whichever one he goes by, he had typed me and he said, like this system is not necessarily life changing. It can be, but it is like life affirming.
Hmm.
Um, it's yeah, like it just like makes helps you to make sense of what you are and who you are. And like I think it was so it clicked, um where I was able to see that there was the TINE category isn't what I thought it was in terms of like just being like a nerd who's locked away doing physics and like that's what I had thought.
You're not a
And
basement
so
dweller.
like some kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
not a baseball. Yeah, or even someone who's I had heard the stereotypes being like somebody who is um fiercely independent and saying, I think I'm smart and smarter than other people, and like a level of identification with the self and being like, like screw the world, I know who I.
Mhm.
And according to that, I had never believed myself to be an INTP. Like I think there was a certain level of internal confidence that they would connect with that type, maybe, which I don't quite relate to. But yeah, in the CT system, seeing other people who are TINE, like for instance, Alanis Morissette, uh, she would have been typed as INFJ or INFP. She would never be typed in Myers-Briggs as INTP. So I found that situation to be so interesting, and I'm like, no, she does utilize the cognitive system of introverted thinking, even though a more helpful category for TINE than I was
Yeah.
familiar with before.
Sure. Yeah, and I think like there's room to grow in CT, and one of the good things about the team is that they are open to suggestion. Like I think when Auburn, the founder of CT, originally wrote the TI article, he wrote it from, his own perspective as a TI lead and probably someone who's like a five wing six. So it's very abiotic. And we call like some of these TI leads or TI heavy people, they can go into like the TI void where it's like endless
Mm-hmm.
stripping away of excess until you're left with almost nothing and
Mm-hmm.
kind of like an existential crisis. But
Mm-hmm.
then we also see TI leads like you who are very warm and bubbly. And I think part of the difference, how you can explain the difference is that there's biological differences, obviously, right, between men and women. And then you can look at like the overlay with Enneagram. So like with you, I'll if you want to reveal your type, I'll, say do your thing, but I wanted to type you in the Enneagram because you had reached out to me in DMs and you were just like bursting with all this like happy, positive energy. And I was getting a lot of like positivity from you. Like obviously you're very bubbly and open and outgoing, and you had typed yourself as a six, and I was like, I don't think you're a six. But I do think you have six in your type, which we can get into. But I thought that you were a core nine wing one with probably two wing one in your heart center, and then taking into account how you relate to six. You initially typed yourself as a six wing five. I feel like you froze a little bit, so we'll just keep going. Because you related to a lot of the six themes, possibly like anxiety and there is a degree with Enneagram where we're taking other people's self-reported experience, because while I feel like people often have like huge blind spots around their typing, not always, especially people who type themselves as six. I feel like they usually tend to be accurate, but in your case, like you're so overwhelmingly like positive. I don't really see I haven't seen any reactivity from you so far. So I feel like there's like the nine thing of like vibing, the positivity, being very patient and open. And then also even with your career that you've chosen, it's very like 9-2 coded STEM to me. Um,
Hmm.
so if you want to talk about what you're doing professionally and why you're doing it, I can, elaborate a little more.
Yeah, that is so cool. So yeah, I am so thankful that you typed me, Sierra, because I think that like even what I was talking about earlier in terms of like how accurate our self-understanding is, like um I related to what I thought a six was, maybe instead of what a six actually is.
Yeah.
As you like highlighted it to me, and like you have a incredible understanding of like the Enneagram and what a nine is. I mean, also from the inside, being a nine, right? But yeah, like everything you were noticing and like kind of reflecting back to me, like rang true. And even as you asked those initial interview questions, I'm like, when I hear myself out loud, I think I sound like a nine too. Like, um, yeah. So, yeah, I think your read on me was really accurate, and it's so much more helpful to actually operate with that self-knowledge in place. Yeah, because if I try to grow on someone else's path of growth with an inaccurate understanding of myself, it may not be as helpful as like knowing what is the true like driving motivation of me as a person is what will kind of highlight a better path of growth. So anyway, yeah, so the career that I'm in is I am a counselor therapist, like specifically in a ministry context right now. So like for my church as well as another ministry. And yeah, I like have always just really felt drawn to, and maybe this is why I used to believe myself to be FI, just to having like really open-ended conversations with people, where like I think a lot of counselors as well as probably you relate to this too, Sierra. There's just like people see you and maybe feel comfortable around you and then just start sharing things like their life story and you really want to hear like these are the most engaging conversations that we can think of. Like I feel entirely like in the zone and like loving the moment when I'm just yeah, getting to fully like tune into someone else's world. And it's almost like the feeling of maybe this is the merging thing, but then I'm not sure. But just the feeling of like getting to imagine being completely in their shoes, like to try on their world for a moment and having a conversation with somebody else about some of the like deepest, like sometimes the hardest things they've been through. Like you really get to have a feel of like, man, what is it like to be you? And yeah, there's just something so incredible and beautiful about being able to tune into other people like that. I just so enjoy getting to hear people's stories that way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's really beautiful. Yeah, so you are driven by a desire to connect, like deeply connect and understand people and meet them with like a high degree of compassion. And there's also like the nine aspect, nine wing one specifically of like holding a safe space for people, like, like you can, and I do think that nines, especially with the two fix, are really adept at creating an environment where people feel safe to share. So I love that you are effectively walking in your calling and then using typology through this like extremely constructive lens of like, because I'm sure you are taking the class to get certified in cognitive type, and I'm sure you'll use that and your knowledge to better understand and what you're learning about Enneagram too, to better understand your clients and like be able to kind of see where they're coming from in like a greater degree of nuance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I've noticed in my time in typology that there are a lot of nines that get drawn into it. And I think there's something about being a nine, especially a nine wing one, where you're just kind of like a seeker. And with like the mergy element of it, especially heightened with the two fix, like there is like this, I feel it too, like this intense lifelong desire to understand other people and even like step into their experience as much as you can. Which I think, nines are especially, equipped to do with like the whole mergy thing and not having like super firm boundaries. Um, do you ever experience that in like a negative sense? Maybe
Yeah.
you're taking on too much stuff.
Yes. Yeah. That's a good question because as I think about that, in in some ways, but maybe not in the ways that like I don't know I would expect if I said like sometimes it can be too much. Um, uh, when it comes to hearing someone else's story of something difficult they went through, to me it's very different than being around whoever it is who like hurts a person. If that makes sense. Um, like for instance, I feel very comfortable having like kind of counseling conversations with somebody where like they are struggling, but I feel like um not not necessarily always overwhelmed by that in the same sense that I would be, or like a first responder. I don't know. I couldn't even handle a day in that world. Like that would feel really, really traumatizing. Or even if I like watch a television show, which isn't real, and like that is, if it's a horror movie or if it's like a really scary medical drama or something, like those things I'll get like secondhand really affected by. Um, but for some reason, I feel like I can hear somebody's like stories of like trauma that they're working through, but I can feel that that person isn't entirely stuck in that past or living in that world. I find it much harder to be with somebody in the moment that they're going through something difficult, or even worse, to be around like a personality that is can be really harmful to people. Um, uh, and yeah, I feel like very um, I feel better just being around other people, even if I am working with somebody who's going through something tough, and I might feel kind of affected by that after a tough session with somebody who's really just in the thick of it. And um, then I can interact with, a close friend who's really like that energy can kind of reset me.
Mhm.
Um, and those things are really helpful. I think maybe the hardest thing is to be in a persistent connection with someone who I don't feel like is that like resetting, positive, understanding person. If I don't have that, then it is probably like the worst possible scenario I can think of. Like my greatest fear is to feel like surrounded by people, but unseen and totally like emotionally abandoned. Um, that's worse than being around people who are struggling and suffering. Does that make sense? It's kind
Yeah,
of
it does. It does. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see a case for like nine paired with the one wing having like this productive thing emotionally. Like, I'm really happy to meet you where you're at as long as we're brainstorming a way out of this versus
yeah,
like in my experience. And if I see someone in that state, I'm not a licensed counselor or whatever, but I kind of find myself playing that role quite a bit. And if someone genuinely like wants to get help and get unstuck, I'm really happy to like try to be there for them. But if it's someone who is just like habitually like venting negativity just for the sake of it and it's kind of like
yeah,
dragging you down, that's when you can start to get this like, oh gosh, I feel really trapped in this
yeah,
situation. And then at that point, it's definitely necessary to it's like nine, especially 911, we're not necessarily super boundaried with people. We just kind of flow with people. But if we're finding that someone is like really draining our energy or negatively impacting us, we have to erect some sort of a boundary,
yeah.
assert a boundary at some point. So I'm kind of wondering, like, how have you, if I'm sure you have had to navigate this, how would you go about putting up some boundaries with people?
It's a good question. I find that one to be kind of hard. Maybe this is a nine thing, but I prefer to just like let things fizzle if possible. Just let. Uh, my hope is that if I am noticing that someone else and I don't really get along and the energy isn't very good, usually, more often than not, it's because they don't particularly prefer to interact with me in the first place. And so I just kind of play into that and I don't pursue it. It's easier than setting up a firm boundary. Yeah. But there have been times and really, folks who are, for instance, if somebody's being manipulative or something like that, where it's like, yep, no, okay, I need to address this. I really don't like those situations, but I wouldn't say necessarily that I'm afraid of conflict. I don't think I like it, but there is something satisfying about being able to just the clarity of being able to put it all out on the table, to be like, okay, here's what's going on. and I sometimes will get to the point of, hey, when you said this to me, I felt like this is what you meant to communicate. Is that, am I understanding that right? Did you mean to communicate this? That's how I took it. And sometimes like there's a reset and it's like, oh, I'm sorry. No, that was, and we can move past it, and that's great. It can go the opposite direction, and somebody can become even more like defensive. You can get a lot of defense mechanisms going on. Um, and at that point, I do um, mentally, I'll create a boundary with them, if that makes sense. I don't feel the need to be like, you're out of my world. Sometimes it's a coworker or someone that you must like share a space with. Um, and if they consistently bother me in a way that isn't, breaking some big rule, but it's just a relational, like a manipulation, like I don't think they're relating to me very well or very kindly. Um, I'll just be polite and think, you know what, I don't have to operate on that basis that they are. I can just operate knowing what I think is a greater truth. And I will just in my mind, and this sounds awful, but write off things that I don't think are good or right from them, and to be like, you know what, I don't have to put a whole lot of stock in that. Usually at the beginning of maybe a manipulative relationship, I feel really confused and stressed out until I'm able to identify, okay, that's what this is. And
Mhm.
then to be like, you know what, the boundary I can put up might just be a mental, I'm just not gonna allow myself to be bothered thinking that this is a fair way of treating me. I can just know it's not, and treat them kindly despite it, or try to anyway. But I won't allow myself to be closer to like entrust my soul to this person. That's the boundary that I really am I'm firm about.
Mhm.
Um, that was a long answer to a
No,
little.
no, no. That's really good, and that's kind of like the nine. I see a lot. I do a lot of that too, where it's like
Yeah.
when, say, you're putting out kind of like positive, kind energy, and people meet you with like hostility or whatever. I've had to like, I mentally separate myself too of like, well, there's something going on with them. This has like nothing to do with me. And also, there's, I think, like naturally, some personality structures just aren't going to mesh well, you know? Like I find in my life as like a triple posy sometimes, like, and I think with seven instead of six, it can get really unhinged and weird. And that in itself can be off-putting to people. And I'm like, that's okay if people don't like get my necessary or necessarily get my brand of humor or whatever. It's weird. Like I don't expect everyone to get it or to like it. I think probably with six, I was thinking six wing seven, for your head center, but like you still have like this silly, playful, positive, aspects of like the six, seven space, but it's a little bit less unhinged and more dialed in. And it looks like you froze again. So, oh, on your back, and your back. So,
Sorry, yeah, it froze up there for a sec.
oh yeah, it looks like my internet connection is unstable. Oh, oh well. Well, anyways, so I guess we can kind of pick it up from, is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Okay, I was curious. You were talking about being a triple positive. I'm kind of curious to learn a little bit more about like what that means for you. Because you said that that will kind of affect you, and particularly with the seven aspect. Um, yeah, I'm kind of curious about that.
Oh gosh.
Oh,
Um, I guess now I'm more aware of like the constant positive reframing I'm doing. And if something that were to happen that could potentially hurt my feelings, I'm immediately going into positive reframing it, dismissing it, because I feel that,
mm-hmm.
I feel the influence of like true rejection in my heart. where it has this protective element of
Mm.
like you don't get to define me. Like two can be like really pushy. Um, so yeah, I mean, in
Mm.
the typology community, you do encounter people who are unhealed, but they don't like you for whatever reason and they want to like take a pound of flesh. And I feel like as I've gotten older, and I've been bouncing around in different typology communities for years, I feel like I've learned a lot and gotten to know a lot of cool people, but I've also unfortunately had a lot of encounters, run-ins with people who are fairly toxic. And as I've gotten older and I've just learned more about personality structure in general, but myself and like what I actually need, um, like what I need to feel secure and confident. And as I've gotten older again, it's less and less about getting affirmation from other people and more about feeling like I am loved, as a child of God. And I think it's been
Mm.
this very
Yes.
like when I was younger, I
Mm.
felt really weird because I am an FINE. I do have like a seven fix, which like greatly enhances like the quirky weirdness of who I am and the spontaneous weird things I'll say and do, just because I think it's funny. But I'm like, why am I like this? And I have trouble taking anything seriously. I'll like, for instance, like this is how deep my like humor as a coping mechanism goes. Like if I'm in a really serious situation, I will start giggling, I'll start laughing, and then I'll feel like, oh my gosh, what am I doing?
Mm.
But at the end of the day, I'm like, this is who I am. This is who God made me to be. And like, I've just learned to embrace that more and more. And I feel like I got a lot of clarity and even like self-healing when I was typed in CT. I had mistyped myself in Myers-Briggs.
Mm.
But I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this totally makes sense. Now I see the NE. And then getting into Enneagram, that was, I think, possibly going deeper into the like maybe the positive adaptations of my personality and the
Mm.
negative ones where like there's a lot of like seven kind of like inattentive ADD stuff where I have a lot of problems
Mm.
like doing follow through, like getting the ball rolling, even though I've got a lot of ideas. And then also not managing my time very well. Like if something fun or some sort of distraction comes up, I'm like, I'm like, so yeah, I'm just kind of sorting through it myself because I suspected I was a 972, and then I was officially typed in Larissa's Goblins of Discord. So, and I've been learning a lot too, as far as how to like properly type other people. So yeah, what about you? You just recently just are you very readily embracing your nineness.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that's really, I connected a little bit with what you were saying about having a hard time like acknowledging when you're going through something hard and just kind of like almost like minimizing it a little
Oh
bit.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, that's interesting because I mean, I would say that's another thing that sort of not surprised me about you per se, but just knowing the little that I did that you were an FI lead. Um, and typically that's connected with being real. I would, the stereotypes are that that would be the last type to minimize hard things they're going through. And so I definitely noticed when you were being just looking on the bright side and really seeing the silver lining, and like you've been through some tough things in your life as well, but that you I've been like it really admired your perspective, but at the same time I guess wondered like do you wish that people would just play along with you and just be like, no, yeah, haha, and like minimize it with you, or do you really wish that they would be like, no, like I see what you're doing? Because I also like can relate to some of what you're saying in minimizing how I feel. Like one of the questions in the typology video is, what's some, what do you think people don't know about you? And I found myself saying, I didn't really realize it until that question. I'm like, you know what, most people just can't comprehend that I've been through a lot of pain. Most people think I'm like living la la land, and it confuses me because I'm like, what? Like I've been through hard things. But I guess I don't really advertise that. And I will maybe tend to minimize or be really, it's that positivity. Um, and sometimes people will just see how I brush something off and sort of brush it off with me and not really see something deeper going on. But there are people who are like, hey, no, uh, that's, I care about that. Can you like tell me more about that? Like, I don't want you to feel like you should just keep going throughout your day. You went through a really hard thing. And I so appreciate that. And I'm like, oh, wait, I was minimizing because I didn't think I had permission to
Mm,
not be positive because I didn't want to bother somebody.
mm,
And then,
mm,
somebody invites me to actually open up about the things that really are hard. And that actually feels like, whoa, like this is, I am accepted and I'm allowed to do this. And that I'm not bothering someone and hurting them by sharing how I really feel. So I wonder if you relate to that as well.
oh my gosh, yeah. Girl, I could have said that word for word. There's the nine self-erasing. Like, I think the nine internal message is like, you do not have permission to take up space. And you really
Mm,
don't want to, you legitimately don't want to burden other people. You don't want to like bring people down. And then, especially with, I feel like the two fix just amps that up, right? So
yeah.
much. Like, rejection in heart space, this quiet stoic stance of like I don't want to burden anyone. I'll just meet my own needs. And also like I'll get my needs met by being there for other people because that adds significance. And the connection that we really do want. And
Yeah.
I totally understand that. But as far as like someone trying to provoke a more like authentic emotional um take out of me, that's really dicey for me because
Mm,
I feel like at least the way I've developed to this point, it's been so much like kind of hiding and minimizing my own needs and then being a little protective around them because I don't want to feel vulnerable. I don't want to like open up my most the tender aspects of my heart to get rejected or minimized because I
mm,
have had that experience quite a bit in the past when I was younger and more open. So I'm just like, okay, that feels
mm,
awful. I'm just gonna like, put a little bow on that and like hide it under the shelf. But also there's a little bit of sometimes hostility I get where
mm,
if someone knows my story, like the things I've been through, and I'm in a space where like say after church where everyone's just mingling and someone were to come up to me and try to talk to me about something like that I don't want to talk about, I feel really like invaded in a sense.
mm.
Like,
Oh, interesting.
right,
Okay.
like I don't want to be seen as a victim. I don't want anyone to treat me differently. I just want, I'm not really even sure where that's coming from.
Hmm.
But it's like maybe it's the rejection aspect of two in the heart center of like, you don't get to invite yourself in. I will invite you into like my pain if I want to. If I want to, if I'm feel and that's probably FI too. There's like that stubborn, like kind of standoffishness of even Sealy FI that I experience, yeah. And just for the record, I did lose a child. Grace knows I lost my little girl 5 years ago, very traumatically, and part of my like healing journey has been getting really into typology, trying to find like meaning and purpose in my life again, and it has been tremendously helpful. And I know you've been through a lot too, Grace, so if you want to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Sierra. And that does make a lot of sense why it feels like there's a huge like level of vulnerability around.
Mhm.
Um, like if you're not positive, then the alternative is to be vulnerable in a way that not necessarily that's going to be used against you, but that it could be, it could kind of push against you when you don't want to talk about it. And if
Yeah.
people don't know, they can't kind of intrude, which that makes a lot of sense. Um, yeah. And this, yeah, I know for me, and this is a weird thing, I almost like, um, I'm usually cool with that, which is weird. I don't usually feel like intruded on, I guess. Like when people demand something of me, I guess that would be different and that feels intrusive. But uh but it does feel like a little like awkward maybe, or like you feel self-conscious of like, oh wait, almost like, what, you see me this way and now my my mask of being this really positive person is now not there anymore, and like, if does everyone see me this way, and I don't want to be seen as that person that brings everybody down because I've been through something hard. um I can relate to that aspect of it. If you feel like there's a huge level of like self-consciousness, between being 9 and J. Eiley. Like there's so much like self-consciousness that uh, you know, like self-erasure is a great alternative to like painfully intense self-awareness, I guess. Um, but yeah, I also, with what a lot of people maybe don't realize about me is that, so my dad passed from a glioblastoma right around the time. Yeah, that was, wow, 5 years ago as well. Like right before, a couple weeks before everything shut down for COVID. Um, and yeah, that was a hard thing for my family to go through, and it's been a hard, um, several years in a lot of ways. And there are hard things in life, even before that, that like, and I think, not that my life is exceptionally hard, but it's not just always easy and breezy. Though I would sometimes portray it that way. um and yeah, I noticed that I when I feel, maybe this is the escapism aspect of 9, but um, when things are tough and I feel like I don't really, that I want to escape from, like, sometimes myself and who I even am and what my life actually is in reality, and jump into this world where I can just, like, for a moment imagine being someone else, or to think about something outside of my reality. And typology, that community, it helps because it helps me really super fascinated. Like, it's something I'm so fascinated in, so fascinated by, and can immerse myself in, and like, um, just get in the zone and lose track of time for hours going down the rabbit hole of, ooh, what makes this type, and all of that. It used to be that with like television or sitcoms or whatever. I would like watch shows, and that really helped me to feel like I was escaping from my reality. And yeah, there's something about that. And even though it may not be the most healthy thing, it really does. It can actually, yeah, I feel like there is an aspect of where that can really be healthy, when it comes to like, there's a sort of strange kind of resilience that it brings. Like, um if I'm having a tough day and I just go have a conversation with a friend in my reality, who kind of gets me into a different mindset and headspace and world, then I feel like so much of my pain actually does legitimately evaporate,
Mhm.
um, because I feel like I can see myself in context, and my pain isn't the only thing that is real. You know what I mean? So I can become aware that, and tune into the positivity that actually is real, and then it's not just escapism anymore. It's remembering what's like ultimately true. And I think that's what I've been leaning more into. And we both like have faith in God, and I think that has been such a huge thing. Recently I was talking with a friend in terms of like relationships, when we feel like misunderstood by somebody, and that's like the worst feeling of like being judged and misunderstood, and like, what can I do with that? Because our positivity, like, that feels like the one thing that we can't like get out of, and that's like that rejection and all of it. And to remember that, like, the actual reality is that we are unconditionally loved by God, and that is the truest thing like about us. And so there's a way to say, like, okay, this person in front of me is not treating me with unconditional love, and that really hurts. And everything in me wants to say that's the most real and true thing. And the way that they treat me actually defines me, which is like maybe nines have a tendency to see ourselves through other people's eyes.
Mhm.
So it's I kind of get to say, well, what eyes do I want to see myself according to? Because there are some eyes that count and some that I can discount. Um, and so yeah, when if I kind of say, okay, who are you to evaluate me as a person? Let me ask the one who actually does know me perfectly and has evaluated me, and I know exactly what he thinks. And I know that every standard he has is right. Um, Being able to tune into to God's love and who He is transcending relationships with people, I think that has been the most freeing thing. And I think it's maybe easy to do actually because of being a nine. I don't know, like how you relate to that, Sierra, but
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I relate to so much of what you said. And I think like one little caveat to what I said earlier is that I do feel really safe being completely vulnerable and seen by God. Like he's the
mm,
one who sees me. He's the one. And also there's
mm,
a comfort because I think I told you earlier, like there's that song that's like prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. And I the first time I heard that, I was like, that's me.
mm,
I'm like the sheep that's like running off the cliff over and over
mm,
again. And it's just really comforting to me that
mm,
in spite of my many, many, many flaws, like that there's nowhere I could run to get away from God's presence. And just finding comfort in that. Like no matter what's going on in my life, whether
mm,
people like me or don't like me, it doesn't ultimately matter because I have an inner reserve um
mm.
that will sustain me and see me through whatever's going on in my life.
Yeah, man. Oh, that's so beautiful, Sierra. Yeah, and I love that song too. That yeah, that we're prone to wander, and I love to think about like how Jesus is, he just comes after us to rescue us, and it's like, and it's his delight, like we're not like a burden on him. I think that's the most freeing thing, is that like that's the biggest fear maybe being a nine is like that, and maybe that the two fix as well, just like that, yeah, being like a burden and rejected, and to know that like we can have behaviors that we are afraid would be burdensome or inspire rejection in another person, um but as long as we literally talk to God about it, like he'll like forgive us like 70 100 times, like he will, um like he's never going to be sick of us. And that's an amazing thing, is that he said, um and I think like maybe that's what being a nine, like that, um like our our souls are like very inclined to look for that reality and to like long to feel that.
Yeah.
And I like to think of that verse, I think it might be like in Acts 17, but uh he that God put you in the time and place that you are, so that you would reach out for him and perhaps find him, because he isn't far from any one of us. And like I think that God puts us in our time and place so that we like feel like a longing for him, but sometimes he gives us like emotional neediness even, um
Oh yeah.
that shows us like he could be the only one, like he is. I think the unhealthy aspects of me being a nine are like hewing out these like empty cisterns that can't hold any water, like that then they're never going to satisfy. There is no end to wanting acceptance from people. um and ultimately I'm just setting myself up for these cycles of shame and then relief and shame and relief, and shame, the sphere of like not belonging. And then God is this fountain of living water, like there's nothing to have to strive to get to, or cycles of good and bad to have to go through, like it is always there. And I think that like the craving and dissatisfaction of always looking for that in relationships that cannot promise it to me, pushes me to look to something beyond human relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's really, really beautiful. And I agree. And I guess I think especially trying to navigate the world as a JI lead, I feel like it's very difficult because as with JI, it's if people don't know, it's introverted judging. So, and there's a great degree of perfectionism, especially if you are a nine with a one wing, and with two, you're always analyzing yourself, like, was I as kind as I could have been? Or, and so like I was extremely hard on myself. And for years, I by all measures was a really good Christian. Like I get up early every morning, spend like an hour reading my Bible and praying, but I could never receive God's love because I never felt like I was good enough. And it was my own rejection of myself because of my shame. And then, in the sovereign grace of God, like even though the worst possible thing happened to me, like I lost my child and I was just completely broken and it forced me to come to a place of like I have nothing to give God. Like I am broken. I'm seeing all my ugly, like how incredibly ugly I really am. And it's either like God either loves me or he doesn't. And he met me there in like very powerful ways where I'm like, no, he loves me. And then I finally was able to break free from like, I have to be good enough all the time. That performative Christianity that I think it just has people running on treadmills and exhausted, and they have nothing to give other people because they're working so hard to, whether it's to, in their mind, retain their salvation through works, which actually isn't biblical, or they can't get over their own shame and condemnation. So like unfortunately for me, it took like being just broken down to nothing and but finding God there, like in my worst moments where I was just at my most absolute wretched, the Holy Spirit never left me. And so having gone through that, and I do feel stronger. And, like you, I'm also drawn to all these personality systems, and I want to be able to use it in a capacity to like help people find a greater degree of like wholeness and like self-love and acceptance. And also to identify, potentially problematic patterns that would plague each type structure. So yeah, it's really exciting to me, and it's become like my passion. And it's great to connect with you because I feel like obviously we have a lot of similarities and we're driven by similar things. And like anecdotally, just within the Enneagram space, there's a ton of like 9-2 STEM teachers, people who are like, leading workshops and stuff because the 9-2 STEM is so driven to want to connect with people and help them in like deep, meaningful ways. So again, like I love that you're doing that and you're actually an inspiration for me.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. Well, you are an inspiration for me in the typology space, so I'm glad there's a level of mutuality there. That's very kind of you. Um, yeah. Um, yeah, I feel like, even though you've said you aren't an occupational counselor, Sierra, like you just have um, that presence, and you're able to, oh, like, if only I could get you as a co-counselor to be where I'm working. Man, we need him over here. But yeah, yeah, like it's so cool that you're able to offer that presence to people, like even just in this typology world that unfortunately sometimes there's, um, different levels of, I don't know, it can be toxic, it can be really positive depending on what culture we decide to create within it. I think you're a part of like creating a really positive culture um, in that typology space, which is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And I would love to have you on in the future. We could do some typings together if you want, explore the Enneagram and
Ooh.
CT, which is awesome because I feel like CT is super niche. And it's also pretty complicated, so you need to have a great degree of patience or tons and tons of NE, six, six, seven space enthusiasm, which I know we both have. We probably both like found it and we're like, oh my gosh, I need to learn everything and start typing everyone.
Yes.
Um, yeah, yeah. So it's great. It's great to find someone who's like, yes, like we're in it. We're gonna learn everything.
Oh yeah.
And then
Rolling
connect,
step.
yes, and then like connect it back to like this kind of like nine coded purpose. Oh, and I did forget to
Oh,
answer a question you had with
yeah.
being a nine and being like very open spiritually. Like I had a lot of spiritual encounters with the Holy Spirit as a child. Like
Mm,
I'm not gonna like knock on any denominations, but we were going to like a pretty dry Lutheran church. But like the presence of the Holy Spirit was always so evident to me.
mm,
And I feel like that is one, like the openness aspect of nine that has been really helpful in my life. Like when my husband and I were trying to find a church, I walk in and you can feel the atmosphere right away. You can tell if the Holy Spirit is there. Like
yeah.
there was one time I was having a really bad day and I was in a really bad mood and I'm like, I just need to get my cranky self to church.
Mm,
I just walked into the building and I was just like flooded with the Holy Spirit and joy. And I'm like, wow, okay.
yeah.
So yeah,
Mm,
that's I think one great aspect in spite of like being a JI lead and all the baggage that goes with that, or being a nine
mm.
and being so affected by the energy around you, it can also be like a really beautiful, it can be a gift, I think.
Oh, that's so cool. Like, 'cause it sounds like almost maybe nines might relate more to the idea of being like a highly sensitive person, like a lot of emotional like permeability.
Mm, yeah.
Um, and yeah, that can be a gift because there's some things that are like good to have like penetrate us emotionally.
Mm, yeah.
Like that can be that openness is yeah. Yeah, I want to be more open to the Holy Spirit, man. But like even when it comes, yeah, like different, church environments, there have been somewhere I'm like, yeah, this just feels really like there's a judgmental exacting. Like unfortunately, sometimes we can have a tendency to be pharisaical, not to say that this isn't truly like these people don't belong to God, but sometimes we can act like outside of alignment with the Spirit. And there are some churches that might happen to be a little bit more in alignment. And even what you were saying earlier about like unconditional acceptance from God, like we can be God's children and be at different levels. I mean, I think about the parable of the prodigal son and how the older brother, he was a child, he stayed at home, but he had this very rigid heart when his like prodigal brother came home. And and he wasn't any less his father's child, but he missed out on connecting with the family in that moment because he wasn't like unified with them in spirit when he was like, well, why is this guy back? Um, and then the prodigal son, because like he came to the end of himself, like what you were saying, like sometimes it's those moments where we totally come to the end of ourselves where we're afraid that like our awful messy sinfulness has separated us from God, and maybe for a moment it has, but if like remembering like he is our creator and all he wants, like he is our father, the one who made us, and all he wants is for us to come home to him. That's the only requirement. We don't clean up our act. He will clean us up. But all we have to do is just return home to him. The one thing that will hurt us forever is if we say, this shame defines me and I'm never going home. Like that's the worst case. But that shame or disappointment with ourselves that we feel when we like are driven to reach back out to him, he will throw this party and just welcome us with open arms. And all he wanted was for us to come to him with exactly how we were, and let him do his work and not have to fix ourselves or change ourselves before being acceptable to him. He welcomes us and he works on us over time and doesn't expect perfection in a moment. Anyway, that was a long
Yeah.
tangent on that, but yes, being a part of a church that's connected with God's spirit is such an important thing, to feel that the alignment with his heart and his love. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And those are some great points. And also, I think it's important to bring a little clarity to the fact that you can be a Christian and love God and also be involved in the Enneagram because like I've seen some, I guess it's kind of sad like the Christian influencer culture on YouTube, it's pretty toxic. It's a lot of like trying to expose others and decry others. And I'm like,
Mhm.
look,
Mhm.
in my mind, God's the one that created personality structure, and he wired some people
Yeah.
to really have this deep, I think, God-given desire to want to understand
Yeah.
and to be able to minister some level of healing to people like out of that understanding. So I think like the Bible says like whatever you do, you do it by faith, and anything you don't do
Mhm.
by faith, that's a sin for
Yeah.
you. So it's like, are you operating out of a place of like fear and reactivity, or
Mhm.
are you being really open-minded because God is essentially limitless. He's the
Yeah.
creator of everything. He's endlessly
Yeah.
creative. And he's gonna have like really unique niches for his
Mhm.
children to be his body, to exist in a space, you know?
Yeah.
So it's great to find other people that are, Christians and open-minded and
Mhm.
hopefully kind of like rewriting the narrative around the Enneagram or, personality typing in general.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is so true. And that's like such a good point about like all truth is God's truth, really. Like I think I've heard that phrase before. We could say the same for uh um the cognitive functions and their existence. Like Carl Jung was New Age. He very much, was in a different camp, religiously for sure. But um, that doesn't mean that what he touched upon is unreal or inherently like will take us down an awful path.
Mhm.
It seems like he touched upon a truth that's true because, well, if it is self-evidently true, it's because God has created us with different kinds of operating systems, which are fascinating to discover. Um, I think we talked earlier about like a lot of there are so many cool things about natural medicine, and unfortunately, that has certain religious connections that are not always Christian. But that doesn't mean that that natural medicine is tainted or evil or whatever that might be. Like um, chakras, especially, for instance, it's such a dicey thing to believe in chakras, and I'm still trying to figure out what I believe about chakras. But but I think it's fascinating because if this energetic system is real and true,
Mhm.
then there's nothing to be afraid of in learning more about it. And as long as that we're not using witchcraft to manipulate it, like, then there's so much freedom to know the world that God's created and to not be afraid. Like they're like, yeah, like, yeah, there's freedom there.
Yeah, exactly. Like where the spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom.
Yeah.
Tremendous, tremendous amount of freedom. And anyways, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. And I did tap you as a 9-wing one, 2-wing one, 6-wing seven, SpSo. And thank you for being one of my first guests, Grace.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sierra. This is awesome.
And we will have you on again soon.
Woohoo. Sounds like a plan. All right. Bye for now.